A lot of people will read tarot as a kind of divination thing. I don't do that. I'd like to think I'm a witch, but I don't really have any magical powers as of yet. But I like to kind of read them more as sort of prompt cards for introspection and looking at things from different angles, perhaps kind of like things to really think about. When you pull cards for a tarot reading, you'll pull a card for each card will mean something differently. It will represent a different like question that you're asking. So there's lots of kind of formal ones you can do, formal spreads, but you can just make up your own ones if you want. So I pulled some cards today. So I pulled them. This card, I was like, this, whatever this is, it's going to symbolize what tools I have right now to bring to this kind of crazy situation, to stay sane, to stay healthy, etc. This card is like, whatever this card is, it's going to mean what experiences I have that can really like help me out right now. This card is going to mean what I can get from outside of myself, maybe from like the world outside, and this is like people in my vicinity, what they can bring, what they might be feeling, all of that. So it's a bit windy, my cards are going to blow away. So for the card that represented me and any skills that I have right now, I pulled this, which is the Knight of Wands. So the wands usually represent creativity, and the knight is always a character that represents action. So I look at the symbols on this card. I'm an illustrator, so I'm kind of used to looking at symbols. A tarot card has to be a really successful piece of illustration because you really have to be able to look at it and know exactly what it's trying to tell you, without a guidebook, ideally. So in this, when I look at the cards, I'm actually kind of like I'm thinking about like every story I've ever read, every movie I've ever watched, every song I've ever heard, every piece of myth and legend, etc., etc. In here you can see there's he kind of looks like everything's kind of very fiery and on fire. There's a lot of like action and energy. There are salamanders on his tunic here. And little kind of leaves sprouting off this wand, this staff here. So there's a lot of like action. Salamanders represent like rebirth and things like that throughout. In lots of mythology, they used to think that they kind of came out of the fire. It's kind of like a phoenixy style thing, just not as cool. So this card, if I'm thinking about me personally, about what this card might mean to me, which is what you have to do. You can't just go on the book or what someone else tells you. You really have to think about your life and your experience. I would think about the projects, because it's creativity. I think about the projects that have been like little embers in the fire that I've been kind of tending for a long time. What ways can I kind of bring those to the light of day? One of those is that I've wanted to talk about tarot for a long time, so I'm kind of doing that already. This is about kind of finding the opportunity to actually put into practice, actually kind of take action on your plans and your ideas and your inspiration that you've had for a long time and you might not have had the opportunity to actually put it into practice. So that's something that I would think about for that, like what I have inside me. For a card that I pulled for like what experiences I have that could kind of help me right now, I pulled the Moon. So this is a kind of weird card. There's a lot of symbology on there that I don't really get. I don't know what the hell I think it's meant to be something about like the primordial being coming out of these waters. But what I like to think about with this is these two dogs. There's some Native American, forgive me, I'm not sure exactly what tribe or where it comes from, but I believe it's some kind of Native American story about two dogs within ourselves that are fighting all the time. And one of them is hope and like happiness and joy, and one of them is sadness and depression. And the one that wins is the one that we feed the most. And I think about that all the time when I see this card. I don't know if that's what the meaning is supposed to be, but to me, that's what it is. And the Moon, of course, is about like transition and phases. They also say here it's about like subconscious and your like intuition and the kind of shadow side of yourself. But I don't really know how practical that is in a day-to-day life. I would think about this as like what experiences that I've had in the past where I didn't think I could do something and I did it. You know, right now, everything is really fucking scary. I've suffered with anxiety and OCD for most of my life. And this is a really scary time to be an anxious person or to suffer from OCD. But I've survived, you know. I've had a good life. I'm having a good life. God, that sounds like I'm giving up. I'm not. But you know, like when push comes to shove, I get shit done, you know, despite all of that. And that's what I'm kind of feeling right now. I spent my whole life being anxious about something like this happening, and now it's happening, and the anxiety is so ever present, that fear is so ever present, that like you just can't let it overwhelm you all the time. It gets boring, you don't have the energy, it's exhausting, so it comes in kind of waves. But it does tell me that like when the shit hits the fan, I can put all of that, like, you know, panicky jitteriness aside and actually just like focus on practicalities. Right now I'm focusing on feeding my family, being somewhere safe. We came here to my parents a couple of weeks ago, hoping to kind of get ahead of the virus and find somewhere safe to be. My daughter is walking now. She wants to be walking outside all the time. So we decided to be here where we have 160 acres of farm. We're so lucky that she can walk outside safely. So I'm making these decisions for myself. This is where I need to keep reminding myself that I am capable, that I have this within myself, but I have to keep feeding the positive dog. I have to keep trying to kind of keep going and not dwell and not give any more energy or fuel to that kind of anxiety. It's obviously there. It's obviously going to be a big deal. I can't get rid of it completely. It's part of me, but I can kind of manage it. When I had a baby, you know, I spent the whole pregnancy feeling sick and anxious, and then when it came to it, like, you just got to get the job done, and you have to trust that when these things happen, when you're really called up, like, you can do the job, and that's what this card is meaning for me right now. Phases and transitions as well. It's also kind of like saying, forgive yourself. There's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, there's going to be those waves that the moon will, you know, the tide pulls on things. There's going to be times where you feel overwhelmed. That's okay, as long as it's not all the time. It can't be. You just, no one can survive being constantly overwhelmed. There will always be moments where there's a beautiful sunset or something makes you laugh and you feel a little happy for a moment. So just accept that it's going to come and go. The card for what I can kind of draw from outside, especially from the outside world. Like I said, I'm very lucky. I'm here in the countryside. I'm sat in my parents' garden. It's amazing. The High Priestess. This is funny because this is quite similar to the moon in many ways. This is about your like subconsciousness, your kind of intuition, your sort of shadowy self. In that you can see the High Priestess, she there's the moon also in there. Also, this crown looks like a full moon and crescent moons, which kind of looks, I don't know if you can see, but it kind of looks like my tattoo, which is the symbol for maiden, mother and crone. I like to say maiden, mother and elder because crone sounds like mean and horrible, but it's the 3 different life cycles of a woman and the 3 different phases that you'll be in. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you know, your mother has to have a baby. It means that like the energy that you have. So like when you're a maiden, you're youthful, naive, all of these things, innocence. When you're a mother, you're thinking about yourself in the world and what you can give to other people or give to the world, how you can nurture and nourish things. That doesn't have to be a child. Another thing to note here, in the tarot deck, often we talk about masculine and feminine energy in a really binary way. I don't kind of believe that we have that gender binary, but I do believe that we have lived many, many years in a patriarchal society which tells us that this is masculine and this is feminine. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about it more in like a cultural sense instead of like a physical, biological sense. So this, when I say is like a feminine energy thing, I'm talking about like what people have traditionally thought feminine energy is, and that is that kind of like deep intuition. Apparently all women are super intuitive, so this card, I would take that, this kind of like the phases of the moon, again going back to the other card. There's also this pomegranate here. That's usually the symbol of I think it's Persephone, like Hades and the underworld and all of that, and it's a symbol of like harvest and fruitfulness and things like that. If I'm talking about what's outside, this is a difficult one. What I can draw from outside. I mean, if we're talking about like harvest and fruitfulness, I think something that's been really important to me this past couple of days is being outside and looking at like the buds are coming on the trees. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm in a t-shirt. I'm in Wales and I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's warm and lovely. There are leaves coming on the trees. The lambs are being born. There are flowers coming up. There are tadpoles in the pond over there. Everything just kind of carries on like normal, and it can be really like a really weird dislocation, because it feels like the world is ending, and yet everything's just carrying on super normally in nature, which can be kind of weird but can also be quite comforting. The world turns, things kind of come and go. It's that phases again, that tidal, that moon. It's just like things come and go, and I hope the human race is not one of the things that comes and goes, but like there are different phases to our life, there are different phases to our societies, and maybe as human beings there are different phases, and maybe we're about to begin a new phase, and I'd really like to believe that socially, culturally, we're gonna realign with the things that are really important to us. We're gonna just decide that we need to get the food that is local and sustainable and nearby, and not buy our avocados from the other side of the world, because now we can't get those avocados anymore, and maybe we shouldn't have had them in the first place. I don't know, I'm getting really philosophical now. Anyway, the last card is the people around me, when I can kind of take from them, what I can kind of see how they're feeling. And this is what I got, the 5 of Cups. Cups usually represent emotion, because water represents emotion in a lot of like symbolism, and cups hold that emotion. So it's a lot about like how we experience and how we cope with our emotions. You can see it looks like there's a very sad dude, and he has 3 cups that have fallen over, and he's spilled all his wine, and there are 2 cups here that are upright, but he's not looking at them, he's focused on the 3 that have fallen over. This I always think about of like a card of gratitude. You need to look at these cups, dude. You need to look at the goodness, the good things that are happening, not just cry over the spilt milk here. That's really hard. That is really hard. Something that I'm trying to focus a lot on right now is gratitude. I'm not very good at it, and I think I've got to a place where I kind of like heap all of this disasters on myself, like this went wrong, and then this went wrong, and can you believe it, this also went wrong. And there's like a weird comfort in that, in kind of feeling sorry for yourself. I think I've had trouble with that my whole life. I felt sorry for myself at times, and I felt incredibly guilty about it, and I haven't had like a healthy way of dealing with that. I believe really strongly that it's okay to feel sorry for yourself sometimes. I've been super chipper and upbeat in this whole thing. Yesterday I had a moment where I just felt really sorry for myself, because the things that I wanted to do, and the things that I own, I don't have them near me anymore. I'm at my parents', I just have a suitcase of stuff, and I'm like, my computer isn't here, I can't do my like Photoshop work, I'm like, all my nice clothes aren't here, and it was petty and stupid, but it's still something that I felt, and I feel like we're allowed to feel that way sometimes, and as long as we don't dwell on it too long, and if we have a healthy place to kind of feel it and then let it go, then we're not going to dwell on it too long. If this is a card of the people around me, I think maybe I need to start thinking a little bit more about the people who've around me and what they might have lost, and have a bit of empathy and comfort for them, because everybody is losing something right now. Everybody's lives are disrupted, everybody is afraid, and we all need each other. And I want to show the people around me that they can tell me if they're feeling sad, or tell me if they're crying over their spilt milk, and I will help them cry and let them cry over it, and then help them mop it up and point them to where there is other milk. Please don't spill your milk. There's hardly any milk to be found anymore. I don't want to go to Tesco's and line up with everybody else for it. But anyway, this is what I would think about there. And I would also think about the times when I'm feeling like that I can talk to someone else and share that with them, that we all need to kind of share this load of spilled milk. Okay, this is like 17 minutes. You're probably all fast asleep, or I bet no one's watching this far anyway. So that's it. Maybe I'll talk some more about it. Maybe I'll go into more depth if people like it. Maybe I'll do it even if people don't like it, because this is entertaining for me. Okay, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane.